Hey guys, I'm here. Last night I went and saw Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods, and I'm going to give you guys my spoiler-free thoughts on the film. I know already this one is very divisive, especially with the critics, but the initial response from audiences is pretty positive overall. And I'll just tell you guys right here, I really enjoyed the first film a lot. I loved the first Shazam, but coming out of the theater on this one, I have to say, I may have enjoyed this one more. I had a blast with this movie, man. I honestly, and maybe it's the personal connection, because I found the first one extremely emotional and a very personal story for Billy, but the through line for this one, for his character, is one that really resonated with me personally, and it made a lot of these moments very emotional and impactful for me. And there were multiple times throughout the film where I did get emotional, where it did kind of start to pull on those heartstrings, where I teared up quite a few times. I really gravitated to the actual emotional crux of this entire film. I love the journey that they take the character on. I love the family dynamic. You know, it's a very much more shared movie. It's still definitely Billy's movie, but it's almost like partially Freddy's as well. Much like the first one was, I felt like those two had the primary focus, but I love that we get a lot of spotlight on the family as a whole, and the way that they are kind of figuring out this whole superhero team thing that they've got going on. There's a lot of great heroic moments. There's a lot of really great action sequences that I found a lot of fun. I love the way they fleshed out and kind of built off of these characters a little bit more and gave them some more room to shine as a family. And I love that they really kind of hone in on this very intimate and real struggle that people go through. People start to go different ways, and how do you like tackle that? I love what they did with it, man. And then I just love the spectacular elements that they bring into this, with the whole Greek god elements, with these sisters coming out to avenge the gods that had their powers stolen and that they were kind of banished off into this realm from the mortal coil, and they're here to kind of take those powers back that are being flaunted by these children, just running amok with the powers of their forefathers and some of their actual fathers. I do think that the villains are a little underwritten in a lot of ways. I did find them a lot of fun, but it's not like they are layered in any kind of way at all. Helen Mirren brings a fantastic presence. She really sells it. She really commits to it, and I really love those scenes with her. Lucy Liu also is quite the presence in this. I really like what they did with her. You know, the additions to the cast, like Rachel Zegler coming in as well. I think she had a very nice little dynamic to add to the entire group. I do think that some of these newer characters, and even some of the main cast, is still not as layered as they could be, but it's a lot of characters to share this script with, so I understand why not everybody gets the limelight. You know, the primary focus, like the first one, is very much so on Billy's story and Freddy in this. Freddy's got a lot on his plate in this film, and I really like that kind of shift in perspective. Along with the family getting extended screen time, Djimon Hounsou is also back as the wizard Shazam, and there is an in-universe reason as to why he is not dead in this. I accept it and will roll with it because it's worth it for me to kind of get him to see him play a little bit more in this world, interact with more of the characters, and actually kind of see the fruits of his decision in some ways. We do get to see him kind of play into some of the humor of the movie in an interesting way that at first feels a little bit jarring, but to be fair, we really not get to spend any time with him originally outside of these desperate moments. And I think in this, we get to see him kind of come out of his shell a little bit while he's interacting with the Shazamly in this, and it's a lot of fun seeing him interact in this way. I've seen some people kind of compare it to feeling like tonally dissonant, like in Thor Love and Thunder, as here. I don't necessarily see that, because in this, the film actually is led by a group of kids. So like their humor and their responses to certain things is just going to be baked into the character. Another common critique that I've seen is also one we've seen before in the previous movie, is that a lot of people commented on the disparate personalities between Billy as played by Asher Angel and Billy when played by Zachary Levi. One of the reasons why I'm not always that bothered by the fact that Asher and Zach have two very different attitudes and personalities when they're these characters is because when Billy is a kid, when he is Asher Angel, he's vulnerable to his emotions, to his plights, to his struggles, his past, his connections and lack thereof. So he does seem a little more serious, a little more edgy in that kind of way, because it's a defense mechanism in a lot of ways. He's closed off, he's fragile, he's vulnerable as Billy. However, when he's Shazam, when he's Zachary Levi, yeah, he gets to open up. A lot of those walls come down and he kind of gets to be a kid. He doesn't feel like he has to shield himself and protect himself because he is, as Shazam, an adult. And I think that's where he actually, one of the reasons he becomes a little more immature is because he doesn't have to fend for himself or fight. So some of those more immature moments, those more childlike moments get to come out because he doesn't have to have these defensive barriers up anymore. In a way, Shazam is his mask that protects him from his insecurities and his fears in a lot of ways, and allows him through this character, through this avatar in a way, to be a kid, to be more confident, to be more outgoing and out of his shell. And that's kind of where he kind of falls into things, and he gets entrapped where he's like, well, he spends more time being Shazam, or he spends less time being Billy, because why be Billy when you can be Shazam? And it's an interesting dynamic that we see actually play out a lot in the comics. I can see and understand like the reason why people are like, well, they seem like two very different people. But to me, like, it's always felt like once he's Shazam, he actually gets to be a kid, because he hasn't really been able to do that. He's always been on the run. He's always been moving from home to home. He's never been comfortable or felt safe in any one place. And it's those very same insecurities that informs on all of his decisions throughout this movie, and his primary struggle and his arc, which actually carries over from the first film into this, even evolving and changing as it grows to just kind of further cement Billy into this group, into this family. And what does that mean to him when what he's known about family up until this point has been people leaving him? But even despite that, I do think sometimes it does kind of push those borders a little bit. This movie, in its kind of like grandeur, feels like if you made one of the DC animated universe movies into live action, but where those movies still have some underwritten characters, some underwritten villains and stuff like that. They don't really, they use their time to tell their story and leave, and they tell a very precise narrative. And this movie, I feel like towards the second to third act, definitely started to kind of drag just a little bit and start to feel its length. I think this movie could have been trimmed down maybe another 15, 20 minutes and made much tighter, and it would have flowed a lot nicer. Even despite that, very enthralled in everything that was going on, the weight that is on their shoulders in the wake of what these powers actually mean. I found the final climax gripping and emotional. I found it really just engaging the entire way through. There are some surprises sprinkled in throughout this, and if you know anything about, Shazam's history, originally known as Captain Marvel, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek ways that they kind of play around and pay homage to the history of this character, and it's a lot of fun. There's so many little nuggets like that not so much just for the DC universe as its whole, because there's plenty of stuff in there for that as well, but there's a lot of attention to detail and love for Captain Marvel himself. And I just love what they did in this film, man. I had a blast. Like, it's definitely not going to work for everybody. Not every joke lands, but I really found this very wholesome. I found it really enjoyable, and I found it just fun, man. Fun, endearing, wholesome, and that's kind of what I expected out of this to begin with. And I love the added stakes. I loved kind of taking it up a couple of levels. And despite what a lot of people seem to be feeling about this, I did really enjoy both post-credit scenes. Also, I like the spectacle and the way that their powers are manifested in this. Another thing I think this movie did really well is really kind of captured the essence of these gods and their abilities as well. And, much like a lot of superhero films, it does kind of become this kind of like CGI onslaught of stuff, but I really like what they did with this. It's not quite on the level of Aquaman at all. Definitely not because of the budget, because this does have a lower budget than most superhero movies these days. I still think it looked pretty decent. A lot of the times with some of the creatures and stuff, you can definitely see where they kind of cut some corners on the animation and stuff like that. But when you kind of just look past it and you feel what's in the moment, none of it was ever really distracting for me. I actually liked it because, again, maybe it's because I do like Greek mythology a lot. So kind of them leaning into that element was, it was just a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it, a little Easter eggs to just not just the comics, but Greek mythology itself. I enjoyed it. You know, for a movie that is centered around villains that are not in the comics at all, I really like what they did for the most part. But guys, I really enjoyed this film. This is going to be one of those movies where it's pretty divided, so I would love to know, have you seen it? What did you think? Sound off in the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you're not already, because I'd really appreciate it. It really helps us out over here. But guys, before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends. Mandy Sherritt, Ryan Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yori Kortscott, Margaret Grace, Melita, Robert Anguiano, Raven McGann, Jeffrey Hale, M. Sephiroth, Jake Cantrell, Josh Lee, and Aaron Myers. Thank you guys so much for continued support. And thank you everybody who's been helping the channel grow and supporting us every step of the way. Love you guys. But that's it for this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.